This is a CBC podcast.
All good, all good. Let's check the bite. Let's check the bell. Yeah, that's the sound you want to hear. Ding-a-ling. Look out. Deerchild's on the road. Yep, that's me, your favorite cousin, on a bike. Did my car break down? No. Am I making a Deerchild bikesercise show? I am going for a ride around my found home, Winnipeg, Manitoba. Slurpee capital of Canada, home of the Golden Boy and Portage and Main, current title holder of the country's windiest corner. Centered at the confluence of the Red and Assiniboine rivers, Winnipeg has a rich history, dating all the way back to the 1700s when the French traders built the first fort here. It's a place rich in Indigenous history, too. We've been gathering here for generations. Win-Nippy means muddy water in Cree. And this place sits in the territory of the Anishinaabe, Ininu, Oji-Cree, Dene, and Dakota. It's also the birthplace of the Métis Nation. You can find a giant statue of Louis Riel standing proud on the banks of the Assiniboine River. Speaking of Louis, that's why I'm on my bike today. Well, besides trying to burn off some of his COVID weight, I'm taking a bike tour through Winnipeg to explore what or whose story is being told through statues, monuments, and murals, and whose story is not being told. Good day for a bike ride. It's so hot. Danse, Anine, Bonjour, hello and welcome. This is Unreserved on CBC Radio 1. I'm Rosanna Deerchild. Over the past few years, all across the country, from Halifax to Montreal to Victoria, statues of colonial figureheads have been toppled. People like Captain James Cook, Sir John A. Macdonald, and Edward Cornwallis, people who did a lot of harm to Indigenous nations. This past summer, here in Winnipeg, a crowd of demonstrators took down a statue of Queen Victoria. Many Indigenous people are saying they don't want to be told the same old colonial story of our country anymore. So, they're changing it. Today on Unreserved, we're taking an alternative tour of Winnipeg, stopping to check out Indigenous public art and chat with the artists who created it. First stop, the Manitoba Legislature. We're going to meet up with Wayne Stranger, a bronze sculptor from Peguis First Nation. So, as they say in Indigenite country, Skoden, Studis. Past the big old stairs in front of the Manitoba Ledge. Golden Boy twinkling atop. I smell smudge. Oh, look at that. There's a sign there that says, "And a small voice whispers, they found us." So I'm going to guess this is a camp in memory of the children that were found in former residential school sites, starting in Kamloops, slowly traveling across country. Dante! Hi, Rosanna.
Hi, Wayne.
Hello, Rosanna.
Hi. Well, we're here in front of the ledge facing north, in front of the steps, and I'm looking at I guess what would be one current memorial of orange flags for all those children's bodies that were found, and an empty pedestal where Queen Victoria once sat. And I could see a lot of red handprints all over the pedestal. And you got, some green grass and some nice flowers and, nicely landscaped. But it looks pretty obvious that something's missing there. Well, I know something's missing. If someone never knew what was there before, maybe they just figure that is just whatever monument it is, the way it stands.
And of course, that monument was toppled by demonstrators on July 1st here on the grounds after a rally for the children who have been recovered and rediscovered on those sites. What did you think about when you heard about it?
I thought something was going to happen anyway, bound to happen, long overdue, like say for us in this territory, probably like 500 years overdue. And I thought to myself when I heard of it coming down, I thought, well, it could have been a lot worse, but it wasn't. It's really an object that came down, a symbolic object of colonialism and what it stands for us as First Nations, which isn't anything good for us at all. Nothing. It represents nothing good. And seeing it come down on the news, I thought, well, good enough. I don't promote personally that kind of behavior, but all things considered, like I said, 500 years of oppression. I think Canada is fortunate that nothing worse has ever happened between First Nations and then the rest of the country.
Mm-hmm. And of course, as a sculptor yourself who creates these kinds of art pieces, how did the artist in you react?
Kind of mixed feelings, I guess, as an artist. Like, okay, no, like you're destroying some work there. And then I thought, okay, no, the what it represented and the negativity around what that brings for First Nations outweighs what that art was. And just as an artist, it's like, no, it didn't matter to me if it was there anymore.
Yeah.
And then probably about 2 weeks before that, me and my partner, I asked her, I just said, hey, let's go to the ledge and go take a look at the bronzes there. There's a lot of bronze, and just see how they're made.
Why did you want to do that?
I do bronze myself. I have my own foundry. Kind of do everything in-house from start to finish, right from the design and conception to putting it on a pedestal, everything in between. And I was always curious as to how they were made, especially the ones that are lifelike. And this Victoria one was a lifelike statue with full detail, you got full facial detail, hands, you got the hair, the braids, the regalia or outfit or costume, jewelry, all that was in. A lot of detail was put into that statue.
And what other statues did you look at the ledge besides
we looked over
the
here
Queen
on the west
Victoria?
side at the suffragettes, and I was really surprised at the quality of that work, like the craftsmanship that went into that. Then we came around here. We looked at the, I think that's the Ukrainian one also, just to our left here. And then when we got over here, we looked at the Queen. And by the time I got to the Queen one, what really hit me was not necessarily the quality of the work or the workmanship or design was what does this stuff actually represent here. It was starting to think about, like, well, wait a minute, let's start from over here and we work our way here. And then I just said, well, hey, this stuff basically is all European in design and European in origin. Where's the First Nation stuff? I was thinking, we were here, we never ever left this country, and where's our representation, at least in public art and
It's
in
in the
sculpture?
back.
Yeah, it's in the back.
It's in the back.
It's in the back.
Oh, Louis
Yeah.
Riel himself,
Yeah,
representing the people.
And that, again, if I could talk a little bit about
Please
that,
do.
why? Okay, if this is the main entrance, the front, why was it put in the back? And if Louis Riel, according to our history books, teaches us that he was the father of Confederation, the father of Manitoba, blah, 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 and all of that, with all due respect, why wasn't he given more prominence here for everyone else to see? Because I've told people, well, go see the Louis Riel. It's 17 feet high. And I go, where? It's against the Assiniboine River. Nobody even knows it's there, the people that I know.
So what does it mean then when we have all these colonial statues, as you put it? We have the Queen right in front. We got another one of the Queen on the side. We got the suffragettes on the other side.
Yeah.
And then we put Louis Riel in the back.
Yeah.
What does that say about Canada? And Winnipeg and Manitoba, for that matter.
Well, it's like they're the dominant society. European culture is the dominant society in Canada. European rituals, customs, the way things are done, laws, justice system, everything is pro-European. And when it comes to like public work and like say the structure of a building or the design of a park or the design of a place of worship or anything, everything is European in origin. And it goes to show that, okay, if you look at democracy, and a lot of this, it's all common knowledge. I mean, it's the majority of that democracy has their say and will usually have their way. And the way I used to explain it, I used to teach high school, and I used to teach Native Studies. In the Native Studies course, I would ask the students to kind of do the math. I said, there's probably about maybe 1 million or so First Nations in Canada. Canada's population is what, 37 million? And if we live in a democratic society and the way, like say, elections and things are set up and geographic regions, ridings, how is 1 million people going to have any say versus the other 36 million non-First Nations? Do you think that's ever going to happen? And I say no. We have to fight. It will always be a fight. It will be an argument. It'll be a debate. It'll be a push. It'll be a shove. And that little bit of a shove to bring that statue down is nothing. It's nothing. It's just a statue. It's not like, what, we went and took somebody's kids away. We all know who that happened to, right? It's nothing, really. You know, and if the world and the world we live in is so used to having imagery and something very visual and obvious in front of them to have a say or to make a statement, well, where are ours besides the one in the back? And what I told some other people before is that me being a sculptor, I'm all for it. Let's make a sculpture garden of our own. Let's make a memorial park of our own. Let's make a museum of our own, or museums. We need many of these things. I'm calling out, and I did this before, where I was calling out to artists and say, where are you guys? We need you here. We don't need you necessarily vandalizing and tearing stuff down, but just keep creating your own.
Well as looking around here at the ledge and exploring the story here, we're going to venture off to the forks along the Assiniboine River to the Red, where First Nations have met historically for thousands of years, and talk a little bit about that art. But before we go, let's get this. I like this bronze statue business. Just picture it. A 10-foot statue of Rosanna Deerchild overlooking the city.
This is
Welcome
I can do
to
that
the
for
heart
you.
of Turtle Island.
I can do that for you. Just make a contract, and then we'll get her done somehow.
I think I got $5 around here somewhere. Ready? All right. On we go! Onward! Let's ride! You feel more indigenous?
Bring your horn.
Out of my way, colonization!
On the bell.
Whoa, I'm on a mission. Caution, caution.
If you take a little detour on your way to the Forks, you'll come across a very cool mural at 705 Broadway Avenue at Maryland Street. It's called Welcome to Canada.
My name is Esther Calixte-Bea. I'm a multidisciplinary artist. Basically, the piece is a Black Indigenous woman smoking a cigarette with a red drapery all over her and also tied to a tree. And it has like maple leaf kind of design on the drapery. There are 3 birds above her. And the symbols that are beside her, like around the dimensions of the painting, are like a squircle, like a square circle with a circle inside. That's really symbolizes a feeling of unity, but also of feeling stuck and spinning around and or feeling control and blind. Because I made this piece in 2020. At the time, I wasn't seeing any Indigenous, influencers or people talking about their culture. Just like they weren't really seen in the spotlight. And it's weird because I live in Canada, and why am I not seeing them? Why am I not seeing them in TV shows and movies and such? And so that became something I was thinking about as well. And I was a bit influenced by Kent Monkman's work as well. And so in that piece, I kind of wanted to kind of show a mix, like a Black and Indigenous person, because throughout history we understand that Black people had also traveled and had come to North America, and so there were people that were of mixed heritage, and so they're also not in the spotlight. But also I feel like it was an important painting to make because there was so much history that was hidden, especially in Canada, that they didn't want to discuss about, they didn't want to talk about, and they wanted to keep hiding because they have done so much harm and still are doing so much harm, Canada as a country. And so how they had destroyed Indigenous communities, but also Black communities in Canada. And so many of us have lost our cultures and who we are and our identities, and are still kind of looking to find it or kind of work on themselves. So in that piece, I kind of wanted to create symbols such as like the legless birds that are up above the women, they kind of represent this spirits floating that they can't land and they can never rest because of the harm and the blood that was shed all over Canada. Also, another symbol would be the blood on the hand of the character, which represents forcibly sterilized women, Black and Indigenous women throughout Canada. And so that's another thing. And also the fact that the woman is smoking a cigarette, because we all understand that tobacco was used in Indigenous rituals and it wasn't like a unhealthy plant, but today because of, all sorts of chemicals in that cigarette, and now it could kill people. And that's what we see. So the woman is smoking a cigarette with tobacco, but all the poisoning put in that cigarette that actually kills people and gives them cancer. And so there's all that. Also the black ravens that are kind of in the tree, just like watching and just in the background a bit. Representation tells a story. It lets us know that we're here to really tell the true story, to tell really what happened here in Canada and the harm that's been done and the progress that needs to be done as well.
I saw my life flash before my eyes!
Hey, we survived.
Holy
Downward
smokes.
spirals.
Scared me, that guy.
Yeah.
Whoa.
There we go.
All right. After a short bike ride from the ledge, we've arrived at the Forks, the National Historic Site, but formerly, of course, a First Nations meeting place for thousands of generations. Just near the river, there is a granite monument honoring missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Wayne, how would you describe this work?
More of a contemporary sculpture, a really polished, finished with some texture in the middle. So it's really not a human figure, or from what I gather, it's not a realistic sculpture, but a more contemporary design.
And what does this piece evoke for you?
Beauty. You see the beauty in the polished finish of the stonework. There's an opening in the middle, kind of like when you think about a woman's body, the way I look at it, where the navel is, and that navel on the woman is when she's carrying a child, they're connected to the navel through that cord. So for me, that is what I see in it. And then, like I said, it kind of invokes a peaceful feeling when I see it.
Now, you were commissioned to create a sculpture as well for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls on the Saging First Nation. Can you tell me a little bit about your piece?
Yeah, I was approached, I think it was about 4 years ago now, from community members in Saging, and they wanted to do something for their community because at the time there was 17 missing women, girls from their community, and I was pretty shocked at the high number. And they said they seen that I had done bronze, and this is what they wanted, something that would last a long time. They said they wanted a woman dancer, and I said, well, what kind of dancer? Full regalia? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, what kind? They said, a jingle dress dancer, done to scale, lifelike. I said, okay, I can do this. I felt like pretty honorable to be asked to do that on behalf of a community, considering what it represents and the whole impact that it has on the community. They wanted something, like I said, lasting, something that they can create like a memorial area around, to keep honoring their women that have never made it home. And then it kind of evolved a bit while I was working on it to honor the men. There was men missing and murdered too. So there's aspects in that work that worked into the regalia. The design worked into the design in the regalia in bronze to represent those men that were unaccounted for.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what is the name of your piece?
Kakige Pimichiyung Pimadisiwin, which means life flows forever.
Mm. How much power do these kinds of monuments have? The one you made, the one here, similar ones across the country?
To give you an indication, after the statue was installed in Saging, someone had forwarded me a picture off of Facebook, and there was this little girl in a ribbon dress. She must have been maybe 3, 4 years old. And she was kneeling in front of that statue and offering her tobacco. And it's hard not to get emotional about that, because that's why I did it. You know, it's not to glorify, inanimate objects. But the old people and the elders that I worked with, they say that everything has a spirit. Everything has a vibration, an energy. And some people think that metal is cold, but metal comes from this earth.
Well, Wayne, thank you so much for your time today. The bike ride, my muscles will hate you tomorrow, but thank you for your time and your wisdom and your art and just the amazing stories you've shared with us today.
Well, thank you, Chimigwech, for having me, allowing me to share a little bit more. Thanks a lot.
Goodness, gonna
Wayne Stranger is a bronze sculptor from Peguis First Nation. We're going to head over to the other side of the Forks, just behind the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. There's a new sculpture there that asks, what is your role in the treaty relationship?
Oh boy, Canada. Well, doesn't it derive from a Gunyaga word?
It's village.
As Indigenous people, we are used to our stories getting a little twisted. So listen up as we set the record straight. I'm Ganyetio. Please join me as we hear from dozens of Indigenous people. Together, we will decolonize our words and our minds on the Telling Our Twisted Histories podcast. You can find episodes on the CBC Listen app or wherever you get your podcasts.
I can do it. I think I can. No, I can't. Yes, I can. Nobody told me there was hill. This is the prairies, damn it. What's the meaning of this?
This is Unreserved on CBC Radio 1. I'm Rosanna Deerchild on a bike. Today we're looking at Winnipeg and its many stories through the Indigenous art lens. And we're still here at the Forks, a gathering place for First Nations for thousands of years. The Forks sits where the Red and Assiniboine rivers meet. It's in Treaty 1 territory, and the Métis homeland sprung up right here on its muddy banks. We're here to meet Casey Adams, a multidisciplinary artist who's Anishinaabe, Naheo, and British. Recently, she created a sculpture for the 150th anniversary of the signing of Treaty 1 territory between Chief Peguis and Canada. And we've come to check it out. Hello, Casey.
Hello, Tanse.
Danse. So, we're here in front of your beautiful sculpture. Can you please describe it for our audience?
I guess you can say that it's a mixture of two characters that are often seen in storytelling, both in Anishinaabe and Cree storytelling. And I guess when you first come to it, it's very vertical. And there's a powwow drum, and there's flames, and then you have the two characters, the wolf and Wesaki Jack. Mm-hmm. Or, if you're thinking in Ojibwe terms, the wolf and Nanabush.
And what are the materials that you use to create this sculpture?
Well, it's all metal, and so the point was to make it last a long time. Mm-hmm. And there's also LED lights in there as well. So there's lights to light it up at nighttime.
And what is the piece called?
Tanese keke totimak, kasis teneme toyak.
And what does that mean?
It means, what can we do to respect each other? And I had gifted some tobacco to a friend of mine, a knowledge keeper, Mabel Horton. And I told her the concept of the work, and so she decided to think on it, and this is the title that she came up with it in Cree.
Mm. And what are you saying with this piece?
Well, really, I was thinking about the signing of the treaty, but I was mostly thinking about how Chief Peguis's stance was to look at settlers and the fur traders as his brothers. He saw them as flesh and blood, just like himself, and so he wanted to move forward in a good way, and this idea of this brotherhood, you and I are brothers, was how he framed it. And so I wanted to create a piece that kind of honored that as well.
Mm-hmm. And what did all these elements represent with that in mind?
Well, I was thinking about how in public art, a person will come to a sculpture and they will have their own interpretation to it. So I wanted to have a question posed. How are we going to come together in a good way? And how are you going to look at it? And how are you going to move forward in the future in terms of existing on this land with Indigenous people? And so I have Wissahickon and his brother, the wolf, looking at each other. Now, you could look at it as two brothers looking at each other, or you could look at it as the wolf being a settler, Wissahickon as the Indigenous person, and them being in conflict, or them being brothers. And the flames can represent either the sacred fire, which is how Indigenous people look at fire as like a sacred entity, or you could look at it as destructive in terms of like tearing things apart and breaking things apart. And then the base of the powwow drum, you know, when I think of powwow drums, I think of how people come together and they sing around the powwow drum. The men are singing and the women are singing. And so it's like a community building kind of activity. And it's really beautiful, too. Yeah, so it's really, are you going to look at this from a destructive and negative point of view? Indigenous peoples and settlers and new immigrants, are we going to work together, or are we going to be torn apart? So it's really in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, so this is a question then you're posing about Canada's relationship with Indigenous people.
Exactly. I mean, 150 years later and not much has changed. So really this work is saying, let's do better, right?
Yeah.
That's really what it is.
And it's here at the Forks, of course. Treaty 1 territory, Métis homeland, meeting place. Why is it significant that it be here?
Oh, this is incredible. This whole area feels like home. And I know that this is a significant area where nations all over North America, from east to west, north to south, come and meet. So it's really a perfect example of how different nations come together and resolve their differences so that they can work together and trade. So having this piece right here, especially close to Gandhi.
Yeah. Gandhi's my man.
He's right. Symbol of non-violence and being able to bring a nation together, working together. And then the Museum of Human Rights is right next to it as well. So it's really symbolic of again, coming together.
Yeah, so many things. What do you think public art and sculptures and monuments say about a public space, about people and about the space they live in?
Right. So whenever a public art piece is created, it's really like putting up a mirror to what is happening here and now. So at this moment, when this piece was created, I was really thinking about these issues, and it's going to be interesting in 10 years from now. Is it going to be the same problems, the same issues? So I find public art really highlights what's happening here and now, and gives us an understanding of where we are as a people. Yeah.
It seems to me that lots of Indigenous artists are creating public art and monuments and statues and sculptures like this more and more. It's like we're seeing it all over Canada. What do you think it means now to see more and more Indigenous art and sculpture in public spaces?
Well, I think this is the direct result of the TRC in action, the calls to action. So it's people in organizations like the Winnipeg Foundation and the Forks where they recognized we need more Indigenous representation, so let's make it happen. And that's exactly what they did. There's also their Canada Park synonym. They create a mural project every year, and they're bringing Indigenous artists. So this really it's really showing that focus has been missing. Our voices have been missing, and so they're making the opportunities so that we're visible. And that's so important.
Do you see it as sort of an act of taking land back or narrative or both?
Well, I mean, my optimist side says, yes, it's a move forward in a good way, and this is definitely in the right direction. My cynical side says that, is this just a way to placate us, right? So I think it's, as always, it's our responsibility to always keep pushing and making sure that people understand that the land was taken away from us. We were visibly pushed out. The law was set up so that were to fail. We were not allowed to have any legal representation to even try to win that land back. And we would often be put in these resource-rich areas, and then that would be taken away too. So I think it's important that we keep voicing these issues, and we keep talking about it and keep pushing.
Well, Casey, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. I hope everyone comes and sees this piece.
Yes, get down to the Forks, just behind Gandhi.
My name is Val Bint, and we're here to talk about the bison because he's awesome and he's a peacemaker. He's pretty much life size of a prairie bison bull. They averaged about 2,000 pounds and were about 12 feet long. So he is around 12 feet long, but he's 2,400 pounds, so he's really well fed. The bison itself is made up of videos and books. There are about 200 books on there and about 100 films. I spent more time on that than I did creating the whole bison, trying to get a variety of, and there is one Japanese artist on there because he comes to Canada and he's a sun dancer. He's been doing it for over 20 years, except the last couple of years. There are Indigenous authors and artists from Australia on there and New Zealand, all over Turtle Island, and those are like, each one of those is made out of corten, and the pages that are open, those are made with stainless steel, and they're laser engraved with some of my favorite quotes. The one on the front is Robert Davidson. He's a Haida artist. He was mentored by Bill Reed, and he says the only way to carry on tradition is by inventing new things. You know, that may not be verbatim, and when I use his quote, I always add to it, because we are not a stagnant people. Like when I was in fine arts, it was a crit, and this one other fellow student said to me, "How come there's no beads or feathers?" And he was Ukrainian. And I won't say all the words I said to him, but I said, "Where's your Easter egg, buddy?" Like, come on. To me, that is just so narrow. Like, we don't go around in buckskin. You try wearing buckskin in 30-degree weather. Are you crazy? You know. So we adjust to our environment like everybody else. We evolve too. It's not the Indigenous people's job to educate the European population and I don't like the term settler either, you know, but to educate the rest of the people. Here's the material, educate yourself, because I ain't your mama. You know, like, everything's out on a platter. I'm not going to feed you. You pick up a book and you read a book by an Indigenous author, please.
That's artists Val Vint and Casey Adams, who, no word of a lie, just happened to meet up at the Forks and decided to share a song together. Winnipeg is the biggest small town ever. You can just run into friends wherever you go. We're going to hop on our bikes again and head north to Main Street. That's where artists are bringing color back to the neighborhood through intricate murals.
We're here at the New West Hotel, one of the most striking examples of mural work on Winnipeg's Main Street. The entire hotel is covered with black and white images, which is what makes it stand out so much. But there's also a whole line of buildings covered in murals next door and all the way down the street. I'm here with Jessica Canard, a mural artist in Winnipeg whose work is depicted on this block. Well, hello there. Nice to meet you here, of all places.
Hey.
So how would you describe the collection of art in this block?
Oh man, how do you even start describing it? It's very colorful, it's bright, it's lively, it brings those like warm, good vibes versus like I've definitely hung out in this area before the murals where it's like, well, it's still kind of sketchy, but at least it's like visually way more welcoming. Yeah.
That's for sure. Do you have a personal favorite?
No, I don't have like personal favorites. Like I appreciate all the different things from like each mural, like the black and white one there. I love how that's like the collaborative process where like all the artists were allowed to do whatever they wanted in that moment. And then versus like some of the other artists, like there's a collaboration piece between Dee Barcy and Kenneth Lavely. I really like that one, just seeing their personal styles blending together. And then you got like Jordan Stranger, that big yellow building where it's just like super bright and he's like bringing in those like Indigenous teachings here, which I love seeing because just seeing like more Indigenous culture taking up visual space, especially when like Winnipeg has like the largest like Indigenous like off-reserve population in Canada. It's really nice to see that. Yeah, taking ownership, taking things back.
For sure.
Next is land.
That's right. One thing at a time. If we have to take it back one brick at a time, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Let's describe some of these pieces for the audience who might not live in Winnipeg. For example, tell me what this black and white piece is all about. It's got a lot going on here.
This artist group from Montreal en masse came here. Jason Bodkin plus some other artists like on his team came here to work with like a whole bunch of Winnipeg artists, and he like travels around with his group en masse, and their thing is just doing these like black and white murals and collaboration style with the artists from the space. And so like some of my friends were painting on that, like Stormy and like Takashi, and just like watching everyone's styles blend together. Like some people like pick spots on the wall to do like a really prominent detailed piece, while like some of the other artists are like, no, I want to like chill and do all like the filler, and like just watching it all blend together and just all the different content within it where they're just not restricted and allowed to like just paint whatever they wanted, because then you spend more time staring at it and like seeing all the little things in it where I'm like, whoa, I like that.
Yeah. Were you a part of the collaboration as well?
No, I was working on the mural in the courtyard called Life Together with 4 other artists. It was a collaboration piece, and we're all like learning from each other. So we like sat down and just like doodled together and talked about what we'd like to see in this space, and like the conversations were like, do we want to like honor a human being? And then that changed because like, how do you just pick one person from this area? And then I was like, let's not pick dudes because dudes got enough space. So the conversation changed, and we talked about like nature and animals and like other creatures on this land that we share space with, and just talking about those dynamics, and then incorporating plant life as well. Like we painted the 4 sacred teaching medicines in there, and just to like, yeah, think about that, medicine, healing, because art's medicine in its own way too.
And you had mentioned that you were part of this community of Main Street before the murals went up. Can you tell us what it was like, what it looked like then compared to now?
Definitely lots of garbage, dark, dingy. It's after the murals got put in, they put in more lighting, so it definitely changed the space, which makes it safer in that sense. Like way more well lit now versus before. They put a little more effort into cleaning the area, I've noticed. But yeah, I just come down here to do art workshops with youth, and just coming into this area, it's way more welcoming, and I feel like it highlights more positive things going on. Yeah.
I was actually riding my bike down here, and people were very friendly. They were like, hey, hi, nice bell, you know.
Oh my gosh, I like to call the North End like a soda cracker, where it's a little like rough around the edges and salty, but it's so good.
Slap a little cheese on there, you're good to go.
Oh, yes. Or some margarine.
Yes, cheese and margarine. Girl.
Delicacy.
Oh, Anyway, back to the interview. How do you think murals help tell the story of a community?
Imagery, symbolism, pictures definitely say more than words, or at least some people will say that. You know, picture's worth 1,000 words. So, like, murals must be, like, worth, like, hundreds of thousands of words. With these murals here on Main, a lot of the artists had a lot of creative control and freedom in deciding what they wanted to say with their artwork versus sometimes, you know, the client then has that power if it's their space, their wall, their money that's being like put into making this happen, so then they get to control the narrative or the story and the content of what goes into that mural. So I like these ones because they feel way less edited, way less filtered, and just like more honest and open.
Why is that important to you? Why do you think that artists should have the freedom to create what they want in these kinds of pieces?
Because sometimes there's stories and things going on that need to be talked about. You know, sometimes the non-happy things, the tough stuff, the things that make you sick and ill. And with artists, get to like bring those issues to the forefront through their art, and without it being filtered, then you get to like see from their perspectives like the issues and the problems that are going on, or like the cool things or the important stuff as well. And it's nice to be like unfiltered and giving other people that say and that power to bring this here to others to like be a part of.
Yeah. Well, we've been visiting different stops on our bike tour around the city, as well as losing weight. I'm getting away from the go-to monuments, you know, the things that people tell you to go to see, the Golden Boy, the this, the that. And instead, we're trying to find the Indigenous story. What story does this place and these murals tell about Canada and Winnipeg?
Oh man, such a big question. I know that with a lot of these murals, the artists were thinking about the people who occupy this space. And here in like the North End, definitely a high Indig population, lower income population. I also know not as the same access to resources. So just even by changing like a space visually with that art, they're wanting to bring that like healing, good vibes, because people deserve like a nice, beautiful place to live, and feels like the North End was really neglected, and here now it's changing, and it feels more welcoming, and especially with all this like Indigenous art, it's really showing like the cultural values. Like on Jordan Stranger's building, I really love like his fish, and like, you know, how like chill and simple it is, but it's so like bright and warm and welcoming. Like I like how it doesn't have to always be like hardcore detailed, or like that European idea of like art and how it needs to be all like technically skilled and stuff. I really like that these pieces down here don't embody that, and it's just what Indigenous artists want to make without being told, make this look cool, make this look pretty, make this. They just choose to do it because they want to do it for the people here. Yeah. Like Dee Barcy and Kenneth Lavalley's, there's like, is to like represent like jingle dress dancers, and that's like a healing dance, and I just love knowing that that's here, and that they're bringing dancers for just the people of this area. Yeah, and acknowledging that.
Now this summer the statues of Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth II were pulled down, the Manitoba legislature. What did you think of that? How did that impact you? Personally, as a Two-Spirit Indigenous person here living in the city, who's reclaiming a lot of like their culture and heritage, it was a very empowering thing to see, because like these monuments like show you what's like values are important, and saying, no, this isn't okay. I'm tired of always being like polite and quiet and waiting for a turn to say something. Sometimes like you got to stand up and be that squeaky wheel in order for some change to happen. So I just saw that as like an acknowledgement that some change needs to happen. And
And it's just art. Like, you can always make, like, a new statue and stuff like that. Like, maybe a cooler statue, just saying. No offense to the Queen. You got enough statues, girl. Share the space.
What would you like to see there instead of the Queen?
For me, it's like, I don't even want to be the person to decide that. I want it to be like a group decision. Yo, let's all like just write some notes and do a group vote or like brainstorm some stuff, because there's something better. Like, honestly, a playground would be sick. Like, something to climb on and actually do, that would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like a giant fireplace there. That'd be sweet. So we can all come and gather, have like cookouts, make like bannock or whatnot.
Heck yeah, community bannock.
Yeah. And I feel like, yeah, that would probably be way more useful than that Queen statue.
I love that. Jessica Canard is a mural artist in Winnipeg. Thanks to Jessica and all the other artists who met me around the city today. Wayne Stranger, Esther Calixta-Bia, Casey Adams, and Val Vint. I know I'll be so sore tomorrow, but it was definitely worth hopping on the old bicycle. I'm seeing my found home with fresh eyes thanks to all this amazing Indigenous public art. I hope you enjoyed the tour too. If you're curious to see what all these statues and monuments and murals look like, head to our website at cbc.ca/unreserved. You can hear past episodes there too. We've posted a cool photo gallery. Think of it as postcards from our bike tour. Try not to laugh too hard at my ridiculous helmet. Well, that's Winnipeg. What about your hometown? What's the coolest Indigenous public art where you live? Let us know. Send us an email with some photos, unreserved@cbc.ca. Let's put together the best Indigenous art crawl of Turtle Island. This episode of Unreserved was produced by Kim Kasher and Aaron Knoll. I'm your favorite cousin, Rosanna Deerchild, coming at you from Winnipeg in Treaty 1 territory. Thanks for listening. Kanaskana Mitnawi, Egusay.
For more CBC podcasts, go to cbc.ca/podcasts.